Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Highways and Transport Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is taking place in Sparkino Committee Room at County Hall, Glenfield. Some officers will be joining online via Microsoft Teams. This meeting is being webcast, so please turn on your microphones when you're speaking and then turn them off when you're finished. I'd also like to welcome Cabinet Lead Member for Highways and Transport, Mr. Ozzy O'Shea, and his Cabinet Support Member, Mrs. Maggie Wright. Welcome. Moving on to item 1 of the agenda, minutes of the meeting held on the 1st September 22. I propose that the minutes of the meeting. Well, I do beg your pardon, I've got to rewind. I have to start. But just, yeah. Well, thank you for the rehearsal.
Anne, can you hear me?
I heard that just there, you.
Brilliant, thank you.
And thank you for your patience.
Hear us again.
I could just hear that. You're quite faint though.
You're coming through loud and now.
I hear the first 3 words and then you're cut off. Sorry, Chair, it goes. The sound just gone. I know Nicola, who's also on the call, is having trouble with her sound.
Anne, if you can hear me, can you present the report, please?
I certainly can. If you want me to go straight into that.
Yes, please.
Certainly, I'll do that. Okay. Okay. Hopefully, and please, obviously, just stop me if you can't hear me or something goes wrong with it. I hope you'll indulge me with a few minutes because I wanted to take you through in detail in this report because as I'm sure you'll appreciate, it's a fairly significant decision the Cabinet will need to take regarding this Melton Mowbray Distributor Road scheme come December. So I'll just lay out the background for you, where we're at the moment, and then some of the options and the pros and cons around those. So hopefully you'll indulge me in a few minutes to take you through that. As you know, the MMDR, the Melton Mowbray Distributor Road North and East, has been a key priority of the Council's capital programme for a number of years. We've been working on it since 2015. The scheme itself is, there's an illustration of the scheme in Appendix A, in the appendix to the supplementary report as part of your pack. That's on page 19. It's 7.1 kilometres around the north and the east of the town of Melton Mowbray. And what it does is enable significant new housing and employment development, reduces congestion in the town itself, improves accessibility at the same time, and there's other benefits such as air quality improvements. The report itself provides an update on where the scheme's at and its cost now that we're nearing the point at which construction could start. And basically today's report is about gathering Scrutiny Committee's comments prior to that Cabinet decision in December as to whether the scheme proceeds or not to construction. So just a brief history. Since 2015, the scheme's progressed through all its major milestones, including outline business case approval, and which led to award of 49.5 million from the DFT funding towards the scheme. It's secured planning permission, the legal processes such as the side road orders and compulsory purchase orders, and now most recently the final stage of pre-construction is to submit the full business case to DFT. That is the thing that, subject to it being signed off, releases that 49.5 million of funding that we've provisionally been allocated towards the scheme. You can see a detailed breakdown of that work and, over the years under paragraph 16 of the report. You also see from that table that the next steps are early in the new year to take entry of the land that we've acquired under CPO and to start construction on site. The full business case has now been submitted to the Department for Transport and gives the latest scheme information and costing and confirms it represents good value for money. So, and I'll come on to the cost, but even with the increased cost we're seeing, the scheme is representing, it gets a good we call it BCR, benefits cost ratio, is basically what the Department for Transport work in, and it still comes out high, which means in terms of a transport scheme, it's still a good scheme to do, the issue being the affordability overall. In terms of the scheme cost, at Cabinet in September 2021, a revised cost of 85.3 million with a 5 million contingency was noted. Since that time, however, and as you're all fully aware, we've seen significant and continued inflation increases, especially across construction. May 2020, we updated our forecast to a cost of 106.1 million. The latest review we've had that is part of, we need to submit as part of the full business case, takes on board the continuing increasing inflation that we've seen. And we've also had that independent assessment of that cost, but that brings the scheme cost to 116.1 million. So basically what we're saying is if we were to enter into contract come early next year, that is the cost we would expect to be paying for it. However, Treasury sets out various stages of a major project, what they'd expect in terms of variance and certainty. And at full business case stage, which is what we're at, they recommend allowing for a plus or minus 10% change in costs. Now, unfortunately, I don't think we can all bank on the minus 10%, but if we were to add the plus 10% change in costs, that means the scheme would outturn at 127 million. With in terms of funding the scheme, we have the 49.5 million DFT monies, 4 million from the local enterprise partnership, 14 million developer contributions, and that leaves a local contribution of 51 million. Now that's up from, we'd always anticipated there would be a local contribution, but in September 2021, we'd anticipated that was set at 23 million. So a considerable increase to 51 million gap in the scheme costs. And if the council were to take on borrowing, my finance colleagues, and I'm sure they'll have a word in a minute, my finance colleagues have advised that we're looking at 4 million per annum revenue cost of that borrowing over a 40 million period, so not insignificant. Given these rising costs, Cabinet has, there will be a report to Cabinet to make a decision on whether the scheme proceeds or not. But in order to assess whether the scheme proceeds, we've put forward 3 options. The first of those options is to proceed to delivery. So, we go ahead, we enter into a contract come early in the new year, and construction starts with a vengeance from March next year. Main benefits of this is it supports the 4,500 new homes and employment that are in Melton Borough Council's local plan. It reduces congestion by taking the traffic out the town centre, improves air quality, and overall supports the economic growth of Melton Mowbray. It'll also ensure the mitigation for 1,700 homes that have already been consented on the basis that this road comes forward. So, the mitigation for that development and the increased traffic from that is the fact that the Melton Distributor Road would come forward. So they've already been consented. And it does bring in 54 million of external funding. That's, the LEP funding, the DFT funding, etc., to the town. And we've clearly pulled in on the back of the transport strategy and this road 14 million of developer contributions. The other thing to mention is it does deliver 9 million capital disposals for the council in terms of some of the interest it's got in Melton. The downside of this option, I don't need to say to you, I'm sure, or spell out in detail, is the funding gap and the level of borrowing. And as I say, that 4 million per annum revenue on top of a very difficult financial position the authorities in at the moment anyway. Even with this, we still have the risk of further cost increases given the current volatility of the construction market, and hence me alluding to that plus 10% that Treasury advised that you should be putting on to schemes even at this late stage in the day. And while it's the most advanced scheme, this scheme is the most advanced of the schemes in our capital programme. Committing funding to this scheme may have implications for some of those other schemes, such as the E511 or the Melton Mowbray Distributor Road South, the southern section of this road. That was a quick run through of the first option. The second option is we don't proceed to delivery. So on the positive side, it reduces the upfront cost, but not by much, however, only by 4 million. I'll come on to why that's the case. So therefore, it slightly reduces our borrowing requirement, just down from the 4 million to the 3.7 million per year. So it's not significant. The negatives with this option, however, are that in effect, Melton's local plan would no longer be relevant and would fall, as the MMDR is a key component. It will have an impact on the 5-year land supply for the Borough Council as well. And it also has the potential to impact not only Melton's local plan, but on other local plans, because of the uncertain position with regard to Leicester City's unmet need, and how the other the surrounding district authorities, the Leicestershire district authorities, are taking on that need. Obviously, Melton's local plan goes, that adds an element of uncertainty to that. It'll lead to speculative development, because Melton no longer have a local plan, and much less likelihood of us being able to seek the infrastructure that's needed to support that development when it happens in an unplanned way. Because we have no basis and no evidence base to pull in contributions towards infrastructure when it's ad hoc development all around the town. In addition, further works to mitigate the withdrawal of the MMDR would be needed in town centre roads, and this is where we begin to see the cost. So the fact that MMDR wouldn't be happening if the Cabinet decided to withdraw from the scheme, the growth would still likely happen, and Melton's network would suffer from that. And we would no doubt have to then take some action to implement some improvements on that network. We're estimating that cost to be around 10 million. We've also had some contributions that have been collected towards the Melton Mowbray transport strategy, of which the MMDR is just one part of, and potentially some of those would have to be returned. It would be difficult to collect contributions for further highway infrastructure for some time until we got an updated Melton transport strategy. So we're missing out investment in the shorter to medium term, and as well on the back of that speculative development makes it a very difficult position for us to really ensure that the infrastructure is there to support the growth that will happen regardless of Melton having a local plan in place. We will need to resell or recompense for the land that we've CPO'd for this scheme, and I'm sure you'll be fully aware as well, there will be wide-reaching reputational damage across many stakeholders, including potential negative impact for the authority in any future funding bids. I'm sure you'll have your own views on that, but it would be, I would envisage, fairly wide-ranging. If the Melton's distributor road, the southern element of it, did proceed without the north and east section, there would be initial estimated approximately 20 million to add to the cost of that scheme, because the Melton North and East was delivering part of the junctions on the Melton South. So you'd need to add that cost onto that Melton South scheme. So again, that puts that into question, or additional cost in that scheme anyway. The final point on this, the 14 million spent to date on the scheme in developing it since 2014 is not recoverable. So that money is gone, and we can't do anything to get that back. I'll just move on then to the third and final option, which is to pause the scheme. On the plus side, this would give a bit of time to try and seek further funding to meet that significant funding gap. However, I think the downside to that is, firstly, there's no guarantee you would achieve anything. You would actually secure additional funding. At the same time, costs just continue to increase, regardless of what level. If we have high inflation, low inflation, costs on this type of scheme will only ever go up. So they'll continue to increase during that period. And the other factor is you're likely to have the damage on the planning arena anyway with any significant pause. So there would be a significant impact on that because of the element of uncertainty. Another aspect of uncertainty is it wouldn't be clear how long the GFT would allocate their earmarked 49.5 million if we were to say we were pausing the scheme for an unknown period of time. So another aspect to consider there. Also, in pausing a scheme like this, it's very difficult after a couple of years, say, to pick it up again and get that momentum. You've lost a lot of the knowledge and expertise that has been gained from the same teams working on it over a period of time. That would have been gone. So it's just another challenge to think of on that. And for instance, just as an example on that, that aspect, there's a 3-year limit on the compulsory purchase order. So some elements of the scheme would have to be redone again. So again, you're adding additional cost to that. I think the only other thing I'd say in that is a reminder of the scheme is been subject to a number of consultations during the development period, and we have seen strong local support, including from residents, businesses, the MP, the LEP, Midlands Connect. So it does tend to be, has been in our experience when you come to major schemes like this, particularly well supported. A summary of the 3 options and the financial implications of each, and as you can see from the table at paragraph 43, the difference in cost of either stopping or pausing is not significant. In fact, pausing we estimate would cost more money than continuing with the scheme. But they're summarised for you there in paragraph in that table under paragraph 43. To deliver means additional borrowing for the council, absolutely, and I've mentioned the costs around that of potentially 4 million per annum over 40 years. However, withdrawing only reduces that to around about 3.7 million per year. However, this must be set within the council's wider financial context. We have an MTFS gap over the 4-year period of the MTFS of 135 million on the revenue side. And in terms of capital, we have 134 million gap, so it's significant. I was going to end there, Chair, but suggest perhaps Declan's on the call. I see he might want to just set out a bit on the financial context for members before there's discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. That was very enlightening, and thank you for presenting that report. Declan, is there anything you want to add?
Briefly, I've just a couple of, just partly interest, summarising what Anne said. And the phrase in the report is that none of the options are really any good option for us. Don't say that the empty money find any is important. Don't lose sight of this and just accept it's just a county council problem. Not a great position, but I think
Thank you for that, Declan. Before I throw it, I think thank Alan.
Afternoon again. Apologies for not being able to hear your debate, but Ewan did a great job of just passing on messages about the main points of the discussion, so thank you for that. If you're ready then, I'll just take you through the annual performance report, Chair. This is gives the annual update. You normally get a quarterly report, but we're now looking back to the year to October 2022 across the H&T performance indicators. And the dashboard is included at Appendix A. And you also note that there is a report at Appendix B. That is the that covers the H&T services. It is a brief summary. I think we've gone for corporately, we've gone for a different look this year in terms of the annual delivery report, but that will form the H&T section of that annual delivery report. So happy to take questions on that as well. Or Pat will be happy to take questions on that if I can't hear them at the end. Okay, so if I move to the dashboard then, in terms of our indicators, there's 17. And of those, 7 have improved, 9 have declined, and 1 has remained the same. But I think it's probably worth pointing out that 12 of them are actually in the top quartile when we compare to comparable English authorities. So I think, you know, overall that shows that we're doing relatively well across some of these areas. The first page of the dashboard, we have held steady on the percentage of principal road network where structural maintenance is required. That's at 2%, and we've seen a slight improvement on for the non-principal road network requiring structural maintenance. That's moved from 4 to 3%. I would, however, caveat this because I queried it myself, and we only survey a quarter of a network each year. And the thing that it doesn't show that while this in effect is the percent of the network that's in, let's just call it the red category, it needs attention. The actual percentage in the amber category is growing and growing and growing, and at some point soon that will tip over into the red as well. So I don't want us to have rest on our laurels and think we've got an easy position on that. I think we're going to have a more and more challenging time in terms of maintenance going forward, and I'm sure this committee is fully aware of that. The satisfaction with condition of highways has fallen, and that's for the first time in 4 years that's fallen, but we're still top quartile, so again still doing quite well comparatively. Average speed in the morning peak, that's improved slightly. However, the period it's looking at is still within the pandemic period, so you know, I would at the moment, I would just take that with a bit of a pause because I think that will change in future. We need to see if we can maintain that basically. I think I'd be surprised if we can. However, at the moment, it's gone in the right direction. Satisfaction with traffic levels and congestion have fallen, but again, they're both still in the top quartile. Moving on to the second page, local bus journeys, and we have discussed this before in the committee. They are, while they're improving and numbers have gone up, you'll see in both instances, both for local bus journeys and for park and ride, they're actually, you know, possibly half or just under half of pre-pandemic levels. So there's a long way to go for the bus market to recover to, you know, post-pandemic. Satisfaction with cycle routes has increased slightly, while both satisfaction with pavements and footpaths and with rights of way have both fallen. All 3 indicators, however, are still in that top quartile. We've seen a positive reduction in carbon emissions. Again, however, that data sits within the pandemic period. So again, I would caveat that that result we're seeing there as to whether it's actually a long-term trend that's going to stay with us or not. Moving on to safety and the last page, and as you know from our annual safety report, we do perform relatively well nationally on our safety work, and that is shown in our indicators. There has, however, for total casualties on Leicestershire roads, there has been an increase over the last year from 878 in 2020 to 925 in 2021. However, again, we're still in the top quartile for that. Our killed and seriously injured has fallen slightly, which is positive. However, both total casualties and killed and seriously injured for walking, cycling and motorcycling have increased. So again, you know, it helps point the work of the Road Safety Partnership into, you know, really targeting certain areas when we see that kind of trend happening. Finally, road safety satisfaction declined slightly from 59 to just under 57%. All road safety performance indicators are in the top quartile. And again, just re-emphasize that, you know, we do well across that. However, we do not rest on our laurels, and we know there's a lot more to do. Appendix B, as I said, was a snapshot for the annual delivery plan, just some of the key highlights from H&T's work over the year, but happy to take questions, and I'm sure Pat will happy to field as well. Chair. This is just seamless, isn't it? Sorry, we should have rehearsed this. Just to pick up a few points, and hopefully I've got them correctly. Just things like reduction in satisfaction of road network and footpaths, and you know, is it reflection and some of the things, changes we've seen, societal changes. I mean, definitely through the pandemic, we saw far more interest in the lights of the rights of way. So I think directly there was people were far more aware of their local environment, their local area, and they sent inquiries, requests, and actually our public satisfaction went right up, but the workload for the team went right up as well because the number of requests we got. So I think there definitely is an element of that. However, overall, in the public satisfaction results, I would tend to say that often, you know, because we're all just human, you base it on the last time you're out and about, you know, so did you hit a pothole? Did you have a good experience when you're out on your bike? And we can get, you know, I think fairly skewed results sometimes. I mean, just an example, authority of work, not even this country, overseas, we did a survey of all the road network, and all our survey work showed the road network was, the condition was improving significantly. You could tell this was a long time ago and it was not this country. And actually all the public satisfaction with the roads was going down. the condition of the roads. So, ultimately, we're all fickle, we're all human, and we can be influenced by a lot of things, factors that make us say, actually, that's a good experience or that's not a good experience. I think all we can do is do a comparator to other authorities, which is what we do under the National Highways and Transport Survey, which hopefully you'll have filled in for us as well as part of the member input to that, because that again just gauges against other authorities. So it just shows us, where we are in comparison, despite the fact that yes, we will have vagaries on the triggers and the influences that determines somebody's response to that satisfaction query. But yes, I fundamentally agree. I think factors, there has been some changes that's influenced people's behaviours and then people's reactions and responses to them, and i.e. their satisfaction. Hope that helps, Chair. If you're okay, Chair, if it's okay, I'll come in on that if I can then. Brilliant, thanks. Sort of sign language. Mrs. Hack's absolutely right. The peaks have changed. The pattern of traffic's changed post-COVID. Well, and we were talking about buses early in the bus market, and the bus market hasn't recovered to post-pandemic levels, pre-pandemic levels. However, unfortunately, road traffic is gone to I think the figures for Leicestershire vary between something like 98% pre-pandemic to something like 103. So some days it's even higher than we would have had pre-pandemic. And we have seen a change in the nature of the traffic. It's not so much as the short, sharp peaks. It is spread out more because more of us are working at home. So it's not that traditional, there's a bit less of that traditional commute, but actually spread out throughout the day. And I think the other thing, and more probably for the strategic road network, is a percentage of freight. I think that as well, we've seen changes in that, because I guess, again, and linked to the point in the earlier question about societal changes, we order far more stuff now, don't we, probably post-pandemic than we did before. So there's an awful lot more freight as well with the logistics sector, etc. So yes, Mrs. Hack is right. We are we monitor closely across Leicestershire our traffic patterns, but yes, we have seen changes, and chances are they're probably with us to stay, but we'll continue to monitor them.